Shalom, first and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Merkakadash, double honors, the elders and apostles of the great millstone, who are teaching this truth and sincerity. And shout out to Yakims out there in four quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Merkakadash, Brakatum. So, Passover ended last Wednesday, and of course, like everything else, though, under the Trump shit, bullshit, right? And then Heg shit, you got a so-called ceasefire that never really happened. Okay, yeah, they may say that it is, but it hasn't happened yet. And you even got some lying going on about the idea that U.S. warships were able to cross through the Strait of Hormuz. Simply Hague shit and Trump shit. Neither one of those ever happened. What you got, though, is a failed negotiations. Because, of course, man, the Israeli state already bombed Beirut. The first day of negotiations, within hours, they bombed Beirut, and other places in Lebanon, killing nearly 2,000. And they say it was the worst attack since 1982. So, of course, like everything else, though, that wasn't honored. So you had all this posturing, this dick waving, acting like that, the peace negotiations, that Vance is going to go in there. Well, guess what? They just got back from that. It's a no deal. Well, it's a no-brainer. The Third World War cometh quickly. And like everything else, though, in this Third World War, though, what's been happening, though, is the axis of resistance, which includes Hezbollah, is definitely another part of this aspect, which is what draws in Syria, because like everything else, though, now with Bashar al-Assad gone and Hezbollah no longer being an ally with the Syrian government, Syrian's interim government is just another Israeli state, which they have a deal. The Israeli state and Syria have this deal that Syria would allow the Israeli state to take some of southern Lebanon, or southern Syria and southern Lebanon, and in exchange, which would mean keeping the Golan Heights and expanding further into their territory, and in exchange that they would give them northern Lebanon, which includes Beirut, if they help them to fight Hezbollah. See, that's the other aspects, and yet 2nd Esdras chapter 15 very much talks about this Third World War that comes quickly, and that is that, with that going on, of course, Gomer and all its troops are also involved in this, right? Because we know that Syria's new interim government, is pretty much brokered through Turkey. But what's going to cause them to turn against them? Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that they've been arguing over the Palestinian issue, as well as the fact that Israeli state has already threatened to remove Erdogan, has threatened to disarm him like Saddam Hussein, so they have a plan to attack Turkey anyways, so all that's going to come out, you see. So, it's a regional war. It's not just, Iran, although Iran was their first spot, and then they plan to hit Turkey next, which is why you see them bombing Beirut. They're getting ready. They're getting ready to take out Hezbollah, and they're getting ready to attack Turkey as well. Because like everything else, though, Amalek will not stop. And they said that they wasn't even done with Iran anyways. Well, this war ain't even over with yet. And the Strait of Hormuz is still fucking closed because there was no fucking ceasefire. So basically, like everything else, though, Hague shit, Trump shit, they're just trying to tell you that they were victorious, that Iran has no options, that they have all the cards, etc., right? More bullshit. And like everything else, though, what does the scriptures tell you, right? 2nd Esdras chapter 16, verse 2, gird up yourselves with clothes of sack and hair, bewail your children, and be sorry, for your destruction is at hand. And what's that talking about? Well, that's talking about the fact that there's a Third World War that's taking place in this region, right? Sword is set upon you, and who may turn it back? A fire is set among you, and who may quench it? So pretty much so. Well, who's the sword? Esau, right? And this is talking about the areas of, Syria and Babylon, right? Egypt and Syria. Because verse 1 tells you, woe be unto thee, Babylon and Asia. Well, that West Asia, that's what it's talking about. Babylon and Asia, right? And woe be unto thee, Egypt and Syria. So pretty much New Egypt, New Sodom and Egypt. Well, the king of Sodom and Egypt, DJ Chump, is pretty much going to, of course, be helping the Israeli state fight a war. See, they're talking about ground invasion into Iran, but also ground invasion to back up the Israeli state over there. The Israeli state already said that they're going to back up a ground invasion of Iran, but who's going to help the Israeli state with that? Because you got to remember, Trump is their little bitch. As many others have said, that King Bibi really is the ruler of Babylon too. That Trump is nothing more than a little bitch. And it's true. Everything that we said, that the least of flocks should draw them out, well, the scriptures said it's coming out to play. And you see how it's coming out to play. Plagues are sent upon you, and who is he that can drive them away? May anyone drive away a hungry lion in the wood, or may anyone quench the fire in stubble when it hath begun to burn? So what's it talking about? Well, let's talk about how this Third World War is going to be a nuclear war, ultimately. Nuclear catastrophe. Damascus, Syria being taken away from being a city, becoming a ruinous heap. And all those other places becoming perpetual ruins, especially Babylon. May one turn again the arrow that is shot of a strong archer. That's talking about the missile delivery systems, because, once you take out the fuel and all that, all you got left is missiles anyways. Because all this ground invasion, all these forces dying over there, eventually they're just going to start shooting off their nuclear missiles, which is their ultimate defense. Main reason why, they probably wouldn't be able to get into Turkey is because Turkey probably does have nuclear arsenal. Well, they have an ally, Russia. And China and Russia have already said that if there's any nuclear attack against Iran in general, that they would take out the Israeli state. That it only takes one nuke to do it, to take it out completely. Can you imagine what a Satan II missile would do? Because you already know what it can do to Babylon. You only need 4 of them to take out Babylon completely. On the east coast and the west coast, 4 Satan II missiles, which have 72 ICBMs within the Satan II missiles. You see, that's what's coming. That's what's right around the corner. The Third World War. And like everything else, though, as they get closer to that Third World War, well, they're going to usher in peace and safety, right? Because we're under a so-called peace agreement. But there really wasn't one made this. There's no deal. No deal. It's a no-go. So that means that the war is still on. You see, they've got to keep that going. In the meantime, the economies are crashing, all done on purpose. And what's that for? To bring in a new digital dollar, a new central bank digital currency, which they call stablecoin over here. A fire shall go forth from his wrath, and who is he that may quench it? He shall cast lightning, so who shall not fear? He shall thunder, and who shall not be afraid? The Most High shall threaten, and who shall not be utterly beaten to powder at his presence? That is, when the chariots arrive, when the angels of the Most High arrive. To also spend their scourges amongst Babylon. And that's why it tells you in Revelation chapter 14 that they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast in his image. Whosoever taketh the number, or take the mark of his name, which is the implantable microchip. That's going to be mandated. And you see how they are going to usher it in. Of course, it's all gradualism, but that gradualism seems to be picking up a lot. Now that the Passover is concluded, you know what's about to happen. So, again, World War III, it's still on, even though, they're just, well, they really just call it a war with Iran, but everybody's under the illusion that this war with Iran is over with, that the U.S. has pulled out, or that the U.S. is, although they haven't really pulled back anything. In fact, they sent in more warships. Yeah, more warships and more troops, for that matter. To just hold everything accountable, right? So, like everything else, there was a failed reconnaissance mission, and the trying to save the pilot that crashed, all Trump shit, Hague shit. Pretty much, though, there was no fucking landing. Yeah. As a matter of fact, the whole story about searching for a pilot was a fake land. Well, it was a landing, all right, but they were trying to land troops in there to try to extract uranium. Is the unofficial story, right? Because, of course, they had to say that, give you the hero story that they went in to try to save this pilot, right? Well, that ends up being Trump shit and Hague shit. That's not what happened. Their ground invasion, their surprise ground invasion, wasn't a surprise. 2 C-130s shot down as well. Pretty much, though, that I think the U.S. probably shot that down because it was an embarrassment. Because they had already gotten captured, and nobody else could know about that reconnaissance mission. So they blew everything up, And like everything else, though, it's a total embarrassment. There was no, you know, none whatsoever about searching for a pilot. That story is bogus. But what do you expect during wartime, right? You know, you can't just tell everybody that you're losing, right? You got to lie to them and tell them that you're winning. Yeah, that Iran's ran out of options. You know, that the U.S. holds all the cards. Well, everybody knows that that's just Trump shit. It's Heg shit. You know. So here we are, though. You know. Yeah, the second week of April already, you know. April Fools. The only fools are the ones that believe everything that this king of Sodom and Egypt believes. And recently, the first so-called lady, right, has already come out and said that, you know, she had nothing to do with the Epstein files. She doesn't like being indicated, pretty much dropping in a bombshell, right? So they may or may not try to assassinate her. You know, the CIA may or may not try to kill her because of what she's come out with concerning the Epstein files. Oh, and King Bibi also has to return to court now that there is a so-called ceasefire, right? So to continue escalating, which is why he conducted the Beirut attack, right? Because under wartime, you know, his trial doesn't have to go through. So you can see why they're pushing this war, not to mention Trump is trying to cover his ass. If King Bibi goes down, so does Trump. So, you know, that's why he's totally on his dick. And it's just, you know, like everything else, though, we're seeing it in real time. But they're going to bring in more draconian laws. Already, you know, under the guise of, you know, so-called Online Safety Act, right? Which passed over there in EU, and they're implementing it. Well, they're cracking down on journalism. You know, so you can't really report much there, and they're watching your every move, what you say, and everything else, right? Similar to the police state that they're trying to create here, you know. And like everything else, though, well, as you know, they say in December, you know, but I think that they're already doing it. People are already automatically registered, you know, with selective service when the draft happens, and the draft will happen. We've been saying that for a long time, that there will be a draft in World War III. You best believe it. So anybody that's going over there is never, ever coming back. Even though they're giving you so-called fake peace deal. Well, you've already heard head shit already say that, well, they're just there to make sure that everything goes through. You know, that, so pretty much they're just sitting there. You know, you got all these troops. Why? Because they're really going to try to get into Iran. But you can also believe that the Israeli state's going to call upon them to also invade Lebanon, to help them continue to invade Lebanon, to dismantle it. You know, that's why that guy Belach, you know, Tom Belach, you know, of the so-called U.S. envoy to Syria was trying to, you know, get them to agree to disarm Hezbollah, which was never going to happen. You know, Hezbollah is the only fighting government of Lebanon. You know, once Hezbollah is gone, then you can talk about northern Lebanon going to Syria, and then the southern Lebanon going to the Israeli state. But like everything else, though, that's how Gomer and all its troops, that seems to be what brought them in, as they try to also invade Turkey. The Israeli state is not going to stop with the Greater Israel Project. That's what this is really all about, is to control all the oil, right? But also, you know, at the same time, to usher in the MOTB. Worldwide, it's not just here, because already in other countries, though, there's fuel shortages. And that's another thing, though, is that you take out all the fuel, you drive up the fuel prices, you know, you have all the fuel, and you pretty much, you blow up most of it, you know, and there's only a limited amount. Well, that'll usher in everything else, and that limited amount's only going to be going to the military. Yeah, people ain't going to be able to get gas anymore, you know. So watch the prices spike and everything else and destroy the economy, which is what it's already doing, you know. And like everything else, though, you know, this is week 6 of World War III, but they're just not calling it that. They're just calling it with a war with Iran, but they're calling that it's a 2-week ceasefire, even though nothing was agreed upon in Islamabad over the weekend. So, you know, you got Trump shit and Haig shit. Expect something to go off very certainly soon. You know, Israeli state's going to violate again. You know, probably trying to march their troops into Syria to take more territories from Syria. You know, because like everything else, though, they'll want Damascus as a launching pad, because they're not done with Iran. And Trump does look like he's pulling back a little bit, trying to pull back. This is all to manipulate the markets, of course, because, of course, Trump is a businessman, you know. So he wants everything to look good on the economy, even though he's tanked the economy already. With all his fucking tariffs, and that's another thing, he's just raised tariffs over the weekend. He's back to his tariff shit. Once again, regulating, telling people who they can and cannot deal with, being the police of the world. And, of course, an impending invasion of Mexico and Canada, as well as Greenland and Cuba, for that matter. Yeah, he said he was going to take over Cuba as well when this Iran crisis, supposedly it's over. So he's got his eyes on Cuba. That'll be a peaceful transition. A new transitional government for Cuba that'll be friendly to the United States. Yeah, that's what he's saying, because he's deliberately, blocked everything off from them. But supposedly he did allow some fuel to go through. So we'll just see. All that is going to pick up very soon. So we told you that this ceasefire is not going to really hold. Because of course not. That's not what the scriptures tell you. What does it tell you? Well, 1 Thessalonians, I believe chapter 3, I'll read it, tells you something different is going to happen, right? And you can just say that with any type of ceasefire. The scripture concerning this, that indeed, when they shall say, well, I'll bring it. Yeah, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. And like everything else, though, the day of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, is going to come like a thief in the night. But not to us that are awake and sober. We're going to be, we pray we're part of that hopeful elect, so it will not overtake us. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, cometh as a thief in the night. It will come very quickly. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction will come upon them. So again, when you think that there's a world peace, that there's peace worldwide, that this war is ended, that there's a ceasefire or there's an end to the war, then come the sudden destruction, right? You've heard of the Samson option. And you already heard what Russia said, that, hey, if anything happens to Iran, we will blow Israeli state off the face of the map. And they're not kidding about it, that only one nuclear missile will do it. Well, all the missiles will be flying in that day. That's why it'll come like a thief in the night to everyone else. And the angels of the Most High are going to make their appearance amongst this nuclear destruction, And they're going to come and gather the elect. But also to send their scourges among the earth. Their amendments, scourges for amendment, right? And that's going to be what you know as the cup of wrath of his indignation, where everyone will be tormented with fire and brimstone on that side of the judgment, And that is, pretty much, though, being cast alive in the lake of fire, which is Babylon the Great. Babylon the Great will be the lake of fire. That's coming, and that's where it's going to be. For you, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. You are the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness. So we're not asleep. We're watching diligently. And we pray we're part of the hopeful elect. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. So, pretty much, though, that's just it. See, what we're doing is we're keeping you sober. We're reporting to each other. We're giving you the report on what's happening. We're giving you a breakdown on what's happening, what to expect. Expect the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, to come quickly. That's what you should be expecting. But there's some certain things that have to take place first. The Third World War cannot be in its full destruction until the MOTB is mandated. And that's going to be what's ushers it in more than anything else. Once they mandate that, expect everything else to pick up, And, well, you got the perfect crisis, the perfect storm, right? This whirlwind is going to happen, and it's going to, be economic woes everywhere. And they're going to have to come up with a solution, which is going to be a stable coin. And because of identification, what do you call that, theft, ID theft, they're going to have a digital ID. They're going to have a way of implanting that to where You know, you can't steal someone's identity because anybody can come in with a copier and copy your identity, right? So they're going to have a solution to that, right? You know, it's all happening. You know, I mean, you're going to see more bank bail-ins. You're going to see a whole lot more. This shit ain't even over with yet. So, you know, we tell you to get this while you still can, because of course it's going to be a famine of the word. You already know what's going on with the online protection overseas. You know, you can't even look on it. And they're trying to get rid of those, what do you call those? Proxy servers, but there's a special name for them. But, you know, it's where you could pretty much, you know, run a proxy server and then they can't see everything. There was a specific name for it, but can't think of what it is. A VPN. A VPN. You know, they're trying to get rid of VPNs because VPNs are a way to bypass that. But well, with the VPN system, you have to register with them too. You have to register just about anything. Oh, and now they got IDs everywhere recording your movements, you know, with your vehicles. That's another thing, you know, because they're going to limit how much you can move, how far you can travel, how much you travel a day, where you go. Well, you already know that they have the camera systems around for these things, you know, especially in the bigger cities, you know, and eventually they'll come to the smaller towns too. Again, you know, they are going to continue to build this up to the point that of no return, to pretty much things will never go back to what they were. You heard the term during the coronavirus hoax, the new normal. Well, the new normal is going to be pretty much, though, you have to register with the government for everything you do. They have to track your every movement. They have to put these tags inside of you, ultimately. Already they got the Real ID system, which is nothing more than a tracking system as well. Yeah, they have facial recognition when you get your Real ID. It's not just getting your picture taken, it's full-on AI facial recognition. And see, AI has a lot to do with this, because if you notice, though, the grinding has ceased. A lot of places are now pretty much using AI to replace jobs. So you've been copied and terminated. You know, you're going to find yourself terminated. And pretty much, though, you know, if you don't know how to survive, the only ones that really do know how to survive is those that have been at this longer. The elect, well, the Most High's got us, you know. Now, some of us will have to be martyrs. We're not above being martyrs, you know. Yahushua was a martyr. He died for all of us, right? You know, for all of us elect. You know, he didn't die for, you know, the whole entire world, unlike what plantation Christianity told you. No, he died for his hopeful elect. You know, he died for the elect's sake, because the rest had rejected him anyways. You know, and that's the rest of Israel. They rejected him. You know, so pretty much, though, even though he was to be the sacrifice for the whole nation of Israel, but yet at the same time, 2/3 shall be cut off in that day. You know, so there's a remnant that's coming to gather from the four quarters of the earth. And like everything else, though, you know, there's a storm coming, right? You know, well, that's just it. The whirlwind cometh as a thief in the night. Yahushua and the angels are coming back as a thief in the night. That day should not overtake us. Those are watching and praying for the return of Yahushua, and pray he cometh back soon. Because like everything else, though, we know that things are going to get a lot more rough here on out. You know, we've been telling you that for a long time, to be prepared. That's what we do, is we get prepared, because we know the King is coming back. So hopefully this has all been edifying. For that, I want to say, Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahushua, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakathum, Jehovah elect. Shalom.